Doctor. Doctor. Yes, yes. What is it? My vision is impaired. I see only a cover. Oh, but of course. It's an audio drama, my dear chap. There are no actual visuals, you see. It's all in your head, and your ears, of course. Will the podcast also be in your mind? Oh, no, 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 no. Absolutely not. The Unearthly podcast is a visual podcast with articles and images and dogs exploding and other amusing things like that. I demand podcast. I demand to see. Initiate. Initiate. Very well, very well. You keep your chassis, your bumps, whatever it is you wear, keep it on. Just a second. You will obey. Okie doke.
Welcome, ladies, gentlemen, and Daleks, to the 116th episode of an Unearthly podcast, streaming live on the 22nd of July, 2015, and featuring Jubilee by Robert Shearman. I am Bill Sylvia, the Man in Black, and with me are Mad Matt Winchell,
Exterminate.
Randy Ronson McCulloch,
always a pleasure,
Aaron Romeo Moon Burke,
I'm squeaky clean.
and Tim the Enchanter Sheridan, who is not a hologram this time.
Hello!
What, we managed to resurrect Tim? I got so used to seeing him with that H on his forehead.
Oh, you can't walk through them anymore, Randy. I'm sorry.
Anyone can walk through me anytime.
That
Sounded-
he construed so well.
Promises?
I'm gonna
Promises.
pass on that. Okay, so let's go on to our news before we go any further into the gutter. I mean, we just pretty much dived right off the board there into the sewer. And we're going to start with birthdays. There's only really one birthday we have on the list today, and that is a happy birthday to the star of BBC Sherlock, the villain from Star Trek Into Darkness, and the villain from The Lord of the Rings, Desolation of Smaug and Battle of the Five Armies, Smaug himself, Benedict Cumberbatch, who turned 39 on Sunday, July 19th. Happy birthday, Benedict. May you die in a fire. Oh, wait, that's just my wishes.
Aww. I like him, no.
No, may you live in a fire.
I thought he lived on a pile of gold.
Excuse me, may you die by arrow. Very large arrow.
A green arrow?
No, it's
I was going to say, are we veering into Arrow Season 4 spoiler territory? Because if
No.
so, I was not aware. No.
no, I was doing Lord of the Rings.
Although I would not be shocked if he showed up. Considering
I have not heard
we've
anything.
gone everywhere from River Song to River Tam to Jack Harkness, so I would not be shocked if Sherlock shows up as a villain.
No, I'm waiting for John Sim.
Yeah.
Yep. Well, speaking of deaths, we have lost another one. Olaf Pooley, the oldest surviving Doctor Who actor, died at the age of 101 this Tuesday. In Doctor Who, he played dual versions of Professor/Director Stallman in the parallel Earth story Inferno in 1970. And 30 years later, he was cast as Cleric in the Star Trek Voyager episode Blink of an Eye. He also wrote several films, including The Corpse, Crucible of Horror in the States, which he appeared in.
That's actually pretty sad news, because there's a very rare pool of people that have appeared in both Star Trek and Doctor Who.
Mm-hmm.
And now that pool is one man shorter.
Yeah.
Still, he lived to 101. That's one hell of a ride.
Yeah.
Also, speaking of
that
which,
is
I don't
a
think
good run, as we would say.
related to that, I don't think we mentioned in our Comic-Con coverage, but one man who has appeared in both is going on to appear in Star Wars Episode 7, and that would be Simon Pegg. So.
Oh, true.
So Pegg is pulling the hat trick?
Yeah.
The science fiction hat
like,
trick.
Although in the behind-the-scenes photos, it looked like he was wearing an alien costume with its head off, so we might not see his face.
Still.
That still doesn't matter. That's a hat trick.
Yeah.
It's a hat trick. He's doing it. He's going for the full Monty.
We have never had somebody appear in all three. We've had people that have appeared in 2 of the 3. But someone appearing in Star Wars, Star Trek, and Doctor Who, that's a full-on hat trick.
Mm-hmm.
That is a feat to behold.
Oh, this guy was also in MacGyver.
Yeah.
Wow. He's been everywhere.
Yep.
Well,
Yeah,
in 101 years, get around.
The article covers some of his British television division career, but it doesn't say much after he moved to the States in the 80s. He did continue on acting, though.
It also says he was a painter.
Well, everybody has, he sounds to be very talented. I do remember him from Inferno. Inferno was one of my favorite Third Doctor serials.
Mm-hmm.
Did you realize it was him watching Voyager, or have you?
I think I remember hearing it at that point.
Gotcha.
He was in Dr. Quinn, Medicine Woman too. He was in a whole bunch of 80s. Scarecrow and Mrs. King, Hill Street Blues, Dr. Quinn, Medicine Woman, and Voyager. Voyager was his last. He must have retired after Voyager, because he's not listed in anything else after that.
Just long enough to be in Voyager.
Still,
Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
Depends on who you ask and what part of Voyager.
He was like 85 at that point too, so that's about when you're looking to retire, unless you're Christopher Lee or any of those people who were still making movies up to the point that they died.
Right.
Movies, he took on even more tasks. He started to be a metal god.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean as much to me, Matt. According to what I've seen on YouTube these days, so is Hino. So I have to take that with a grain of salt
Is
now.
Hino even still around?
Yes.
Really? Okay.
Yes. I will share with you a link after the podcast, Matt.
Oh my.
It may blow your mind. Okay, moving on.
So, moving into our Doctor Who news for Series 9. The series premiere, The Magician's Apprentice, will be holding a screening as part of the Guardian's Edinburgh International Television Festival on the 27th of August 2015. The event is already sold out, which may be relevant as BBC Worldwide considers further events. Series 8 premieres Deep Breath, which did have several similar limited advanced screenings, also had a very short cinematic run after its television premiere. Although this one is the first part of a 2-parter, so I'm kind of curious if they're going to... Well, it does say there's 45 minutes for the screening, so I guess they're still just showing part 1. I'm not sure how much I'd want to pay for that.
They're basically giving you a piece of candy and saying you gotta tune in for the rest.
Deep Breath was also what, a 70-minute?
Something like that, yeah.
So I don't know if this one
it
actually
was
is
a full double episode.
Mm-hmm. So this one's a regular, or a slightly like a 3-minute longer episode, which I don't know if that would. Well,
No, it's
we've
a
proven
normal
there's an
size
audience for
episode.
it.
It's more or
Because
less
remember,
normal
42
size.
minutes is the approximate run.
Yeah.
So it goes plus or minus
Gotcha.
X amount of minutes. All right. So in the last few weeks, we had mentioned in our news that Indiegogo campaign of the short film Last Man on Earth, which stars Colin Baker.
Yep.
Well, today we can announce that within the last few days of the campaign, Last Man on Earth got its full funding.
Woo!
Despite the campaign being over, it is still possible for those who wish to purchase backing incentives to do so.
Usually how it goes on those.
Speaking about the project, Baker said, "The idea and writing intrigued and excited me, and the idea of going to Manchester to film excited me even more because that's where I'm from." So he's using this to a vacation to go home and see the family.
Maybe.
Locked
And
him
director-
in a room with the Sixth Doctor episode.
That is what he's known for. Director Darren Langridge said, "We're hugely excited to have someone of Colin's sci-fi caliber on board. We can't wait to get started. We're honored to have some of our contributors join the team on one of our shooting days. These are some of the people who made it all possible. So have them be on set of this is a real thrill for us too." For more information, you can find it on the film's Facebook site.
So
Yep.
good news, everyone.
Good news.
It's
Well,
a
it's good
supposit-
news. Yeah. Well, it's good news for Germany, or just news for Germany. Germany's Fox station has announced that Series 9 will be airing beginning in December this year. This is a change from past year's same-month airings, possibly related to the difficulties that forced Series 8 to be aired with subtitles rather than being dubbed in time.
Apparently, Germany's still having voice acting issues.
Publisher CrossCult has announced a monthly release of ebooks titled Zeitreisen. I hope I said that right. A translation
right.
of the Time Trip series. The first book in this series will be A.I. Kennedy's 2013 Fourth Doctor story, The Death Pit, on October 26th of this year. Other upcoming releases include print novels such as Justin Richards' 2014 Eighth Doctor novel Silhouette on the 24th of August, Mike Tucker's 2014 12th Doctor novel The Crawling Terror on 8th February 2016, and James Goss's 2015 novelization of City of Death in November of that year. Audible Germany has also announced the upcoming release of Garrett Roberts' novelization of Shada. And Time Lash, the first German Doctor Who convention, has been sold out. The convention features Paul McGann, Nicholas Briggs, Caitlin Stewart, Nicola Bryant, Terry Malloy, Toby Haddock, Nev Fountain, Terrence Dix, Andrew Cartmel, and other guests, and takes place in Kassel on the 24th and 25th of October this year. So if you wanted to go to the Time Lash, sorry, it's been sold out.
Yeah, and that's, I really wish the Germans could have gotten a better name for their convention instead of naming it after an Eric Soward novel.
Well, I'm sure it sounds better in German.
I'd have to look up the translation for that.
Although I don't think they translated it for the name of the convention. I just think they stuck with Time Lash.
Depends upon how much English the creators can speak, I think.
Either way, I feel like the ones who, at least the longtime German fans, must have watched Doctor Who in English, because I don't think it was heavily dubbed until the past few years at most.
I'm biting to trying not to do bad German accent and make fun of this. I really am.
Should I start doing bad German accent? I am half German.
There's a reason.
That German accent is so good, yeah.
Oh yeah.
There's a reason I didn't stick Tim with a list of the German titles of the novels.
Oh, We should read the Death Pit and the Silhouette and the City of Death. Oh yeah.
Oh, a large city of death. Yes.
And then afterwards, you may touch my monkey.
And we
No,
just
I
lost
have
our
a chimp.
German audience.
You can touch my monkey.
Bye,
Oh,
German
beware the
audience.
crawling tower.
Actually,
Please
that was
don't
an old
kill us,
Saturday
German
Night Live routine, Bill.
Ah,
And later on, we can do some squats and some push-ups.
And that was an old Second City routine, Bill, stuff that they did in DBZ Abridged. So,
ah.
give us the big finish news, Bill,
Yep.
before this gets
we have-
worse.
We have quite a lot of Big Finish, so it's going to be a bit broken up today. But we start off with Big Finish has announced that Gareth David Lloyd will return as Yanto Jones in the second of the upcoming series of Torchwood audio dramas, Fall to Earth. Yanto's lack of appearance in The Conspiracy and Harkness not yet being confirmed for Fall to Earth may mean any number of things, from either of these being companion chronicle-style audiobooks to a non-linear timeline in which The Conspiracy is set after Season 3 and Fall to Earth is set before Season 1, or probably any number of reasons in between.
Well,
Yeah,
find
it's
out.
possible that they just haven't gotten Harkness confirmed yet for Fall to Earth. And it's... Or there's just the way that Conspiracy was written, Ianto just wasn't involved in it.
Well, they're
There's a
being
million...
very quiet about it.
Yeah.
They're keeping very mum on what this is, and that's kind of annoying for us because we really kind of want to know what they're planning for Torchwood.
At the same
It's
time,
noted
they want to surprise
this is going to be released in October. They were actually planning for there to be a gap between the first and second releases, but everything fell together so quickly that there actually won't be.
Mm.
How often does that happen?
Mm-hmm.
Couldn't tell you. Anyway, fans of the Big Finish Productions Doctor Who monthly range have a chance to win 5 or possibly even 200 titles by participating in a survey. You can visit bigfinish.com to fill out a questionnaire about which are your favorite releases in each group of 20 to get automatically entered to be one of the 5 winners for 5 digital stories of your choice. From this survey, the top 20 releases will go on to the second survey, from which one grand prize winner will win the first 200 main range releases. That's a lot of data, people. The ending date for this survey has not yet been released, so if you want to win, vote fast.
Okay, we gotta
I've
keep that
already
tab
entered.
open.
Alright. The cast for Fallen Angels from 2016's Classic Doctor's New Monsters box set has been released. Joining the 5th Doctor for his new adventure is Sacha Dhawan from the History Boys, An Adventure in Space and Time, and Diane Morgan from Alpha Papa and Charlie Brooker's Weekly Wipe as Joel and Gabby Finch, honeymooning tourists who enlist the Doctor's help when they find themselves stranded in 16th century Rome. Together they encounter Renaissance artist Michelangelo, played by Matthew Kelly, Bleak House and Relative Shadows, whose latest statue is looking strangely familiar. With the title of The Fallen Angels and a statue, I wonder what this could mean. Other cast members include Joe Jameson from Great Expectations as Piero, and Dan Starkey from Doctor Who's Straw Wizards vs. Aliens as the Priest.
That's
I
Strax.
think you're saying
He's
that's
Strax.
Doctor Who's Strax.
Yeah,
Oh,
that's...
so we can
Oh,
we can
Strax.
confirm. I guess that means we can confirm that Dan Starkey is working with Big Finish now, which probably means that the 8th Doctor's new monsters thing versus Centaurans is going to be him against an army of Dan Starkey. But, so the 4th Doctor met Leonardo, the 5th Doctor is meeting Michelangelo, so the 6th and 7th Doctor is going to meet Raphael and Donatello?
Cross fingers, please, 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 please.
Just as
And-
long as they don't continue that and have another one meet Venus de Milo, because then someone needs to die.
Oh, why'd you have to bring that one up? God damn it, Randy. Now you deserve a kick in the dick.
Hey, I wasn't saying it in an approvingly way. I was saying it that if they did that, they need to die.
But
a
you
lot.
had to bring it up. You had to bring that up. Ugh. Ugh.
One day.
I swear to
One
God,
day
Randy will
history
dine
will
on turtle
be-
soup.
Wow. So apparently Matt's channeling Shredder now.
You have brought out my rage.
All right, and as for our regular Big Finish news, we have one short trip that's been recently released and one announced story in the Fourth Doctor range. As for this month's short trip, we have Dark Convoy. Materializing aboard the submarine HMS Thunder during the Second World War, the Doctor and Ace join Commander Fitzgerald and his crew as they track a fellow sub in trouble. While the Doctor advises the captain on navigational matters, Ace joins in a daring mission to rescue sailors in the water. With German planes overhead, no one's survival is guaranteed. And this is, of course, Sophie Aldred featuring the Seventh Doctor.
You know, I would love to have seen that as the fact that they were tracking a German sub because, you know, then you've got that whole like World War II sub tension going on. But no, there's got to be a sub in trouble.
Yeah. That and yeah, Big Finish isn't Mark Gaddis, so they could probably pull off
Submarine tension and drama.
Mhm.
Well,
Yeah.
the extra part of it is that you've got no visual reference, which is kind of cool for being in a sub because when subs can't actually see each other, so.
Right. As for the future release, we have the announcement for Fourth Doctor Adventures Return to Telos. The Doctor reveals to Leela that they're heading for the planet Telos, and K9 has new masters. On Telos, in the past, the Second Doctor and Jamie are exploring the Tomb of the Cybermen. Meanwhile, the Cyber Controller and Cyber Planner consolidate their plans. Spare parts from Kralos are being used to construct a mighty cyber army. The Doctor must be captured. Out of control, the TARDIS tumbles down a chasm, and the Doctor and Leela find themselves caught up in a full-scale planetary invasion.
That will be very interesting to see how they gauge that.
Mhm.
Because if you remember from our Attack of the Cybermen, our special, the Sixth Doctor was unaware that the Cyber Controller had survived from Tomb.
I think this is like, I think basically to take place during the time where the Second Doctor and friends are all up in the room upstairs and the Cybermen are all downstairs. I guess the Fourth Doctor and friends are showing up downstairs to deal with the Cybermen. That is kind of awkward positioning.
Yeah, it really kind of is. I'm kind of wondering how that's going to work.
This Big Finish, they'll pull off something.
So that's kind of the end of our main news.
This will be the first release in the 5th series of Fourth Doctor. Oh no, I'm sorry. I misread that. Okay, never mind. I'm saying the 5th series will start with Wave of Destruction. So
that's the end of the 4th series?
Yeah. Oh yes, that's right. This is the finale of the 4th series. And this is... Damn it. I thought I had seen when the release was intended. Oh, maybe I might have misread when it intended to be. So this might actually be out now. Let me... Sorry, I had misread the article thinking this was being released in January, so this might actually be out now. This is out now. Or out this month at the very least, so...
Hey, Bill, do you have enough money to buy this? Because I'm overly curious how this is going to work. Because apparently they bump into Jamie, too.
Any money I spend on Big Finish in the near future is either going toward Gallifrey, so I could see Ace as a member of the CIA, toward the Sixth Doctor regeneration story, or toward the new Who box sets.
Because I'm not going to be able to afford any of this.
Unfortunately, I can't afford all three.
I can't afford any of this till I get a job.
Right.
I can't afford much of anything until after the convention.
That too. But no, I'm curious because apparently they bump into Jamie on this because it's Tom Baker, Louise Jason, John Leeson, and Fraser Hines. And of course, Nick Briggs being the Cyberman, as usual.
Of course.
because he's basically Mr. Voice.
Well, Jamie's met the second, third, fifth, and sixth Doctors. He might as well meet the fourth. The fourth was trapped in borrowed footage from Shada at the time.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Oh, yeah. Before we go on to our presentation, we do have some non-Doctor Who sci-fi news we wanted to discuss, or not.
Well, it's not
news,
so much
okay.
news as discussion review. Aaron and I, being the theater goers of our group, apparently, took our normal Tuesday trip to Marcus Cinema, and this time we decided to see the latest entry into the Marvel Cinematic Universe, Ant-Man. Now, I don't know if we did an active review of Avengers Age of Ultron, which was the last entry we saw, but we honestly were not that thrilled with it. And it was mostly a case, I think, of them putting too much into it, that it kind of got to be a bit of a confusing mess. Ant-Man, however, is pretty much right down to basics. And it is a very wonderful movie. It's very well written. You actually like the characters. You get enough time dealing with the characters. And Michael Douglas, who I was afraid was going to phone in his acting, thinking that the role he was in was beneath him, does a wonderful job as an old, bitter Hank Pym. There's a few, minor.
How much is Pym's role in this? Is it a big role?
It's fairly extensive. He is basically functioning as a mentor character to Scott Lang. He's the one behind Scott Lang getting the Ant-Man suit. He's the one behind training Scott Lang to use the Ant-Man suit. Really, I mean, does anybody care if we go into spoiler territory here?
I'm
Just
okay.
have a spoiler alarm.
Are there groundbreaking spoilers?
Well, I was going to touch a little bit in the plot.
That's fine.
All right. I will warn you now. Bring up the spoiler alert there, Matt.
See, in my head there was a spoiler sign of River Song, so now I'm picturing Alex Kingston wailing like a banshee.
So, in your mind, you're picturing Alex Kingston. Got it.
Seriously, I gotta get
No, Alex Kingston, we love you. You're a wonderful actress.
We don't blame you for River.
No more River Song, please.
Yeah. Which reminds me, I should actually get like a Silent Hills alarm ready for one of these next time it comes up. Not to mention we should have a spoiler image, but anyway.
Yeah, that would be nice too. Anyway, in essence, Ant-Man is a movie about a heist. Henry Pym hires Scott Lang to steal stuff from his former company, headed by the bad guy, who is basically making miniaturization technology to basically be thrown onto the world market, including terrorists. Lang is, of course, a former criminal and basically hires some of his friends to help him in this massive heist of this high technology firm. And that is basically the crux of what the movie's about. So you have Pym kind of with them every step of the way on this. And Michael Douglas's character is wonderful. You go through Lang, who's, of course, first freaked out. And then you go through kind of a training montage of him learning how to use the suit and learning how to control ants and turning himself from this, reluctant criminal to becoming, Ant-Man, the hero.
Yes.
And it's
I forget which Ant-Man is which. Is this the pervert one that hangs out in women's showers, or is that the other Ant-Man?
There's
think
been
there are
multiple Ant.
Yeah.
There are 3, but no one really talks about the third Ant-Man.
Ah,
That might be the one you're referring to, Bill.
it might be.
Because I
Because
don't think any of the
original
main two
Ant-Man,
did that.
the original Ant-Man is Henry Pym, Hank Pym,
Right.
and that still holds true in this movie. Although by the time the film starts, Pym's days as Ant-Man are over.
Okay, so Pym is Ant-Man. He's not just Ant-Man's mentor. He's a retired hero at this point.
He's
Yeah, he
essentially
was
Bruce
Ant-Man.
Wayne from like Batman Beyond. He's essentially Bruce Wayne from Batman Beyond, is what he is in this.
Okay, no, I'm sorry. There's been 4 Ant-Men.
Ah,
There's one that we talk
Hank
about
Pym
even less.
is the original Ant-Man, but he was
Mhm.
also Hank Pym was a man with an identity crisis in the comics. He was the creator of
eventually had that,
Ultron, and he was also at various points Giant Man, Goliath, Yellow Jacket,
right.
and at one point even Wasp. Since he
He
moved
got
on
pissed
to
off
other
when Hawkeye was Goliath.
and since he moved on, other people became Ant-Man. Scott Lang is the second Ant-Man, and he originally stole the suit in the comics, and that holds true in the movie. Although you discover the fact that Pym wanted him to take the suit. Then you have Chris McCarthy, who was basically a agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. that took the Ant-Man stuff. And no one talks about Chris McCarthy. And then you've got Eric O'Grady, who is the 4th Ant-Man, and he's the one that was peeping in women's showers and trying to seduce women.
Ah,
Oy. Number 4 is going to be a hard forgotten one, apparently.
Yeah, but we only are dealing with Scott Lang and Hank Pym in this.
Which are the two preferred anyways.
They've done a very good job at giving Hank Pym an alternate past that actually makes him more of a tragic character. Then there were many issues with Hank Pym in the comic books. At one point, he was a spouse abuser. At one point, I think he was a bit of a drunkard. He had a hard time dealing with the fact that he was a superhero now and not just a scientist. He had a lot of issues.
at one point he was a Skrull, but then again, that's true of half the Marvel universe.
Yes.
Or Zorn.
In this one, they've completely redone his backstory. Hank Pym was Ant-Man. He worked with S.H.I.E.L.D. for a good chunk in like the 70s and 80s. And he died, or he retired after his wife was killed on a mission. And
Is the Wasp
retired
in
after
this?
Wasp died.
No, because his wife was the Wasp.
Yeah.
Technically, you see her in a flashback scene.
So we're not going to see her unless she appears in Agent Carter. That's what you're saying.
Well, more spoilers. Technically, she's not dead.
Oh.
Technically, what happened is she shrunk to subatomic scale.
Ah.
And as far as
They
they know,
lost her.
they lost her. As far as they know, she's basically shrinking throughout, the rest of time. So
awkward.
Yeah, it's fairly tragic. What the hell? But that, of course, always means that there's the possibility of them bringing her back. Pym, the situation with him losing his wife caused their daughter to become disillusioned with her father and caused a huge rift there. That's part of the plot, is trying to mend that rift. And she's kind of upset that Pym chose Scott Lang to take the suit and didn't give it to her, kind of thing. And you've got, a lot of various various things going on. You've got Lang's associates, these three guys, one of which who's, I think a Latino comedian of some note. Did we ever figure out who played him, Aaron?
Looking it up
Did
now.
not figure it out. No.
But he provides most of the comedy relief for the movie. There's a few bits with, Ant-Man doing some physical comedy. But Michael Pena is the character I was talking about, the Mexican, who I was not that familiar with, but he does a very good job at making it funny. And there's really nothing worthwhile that I can see that he's been in that would ring bells. So he does a very good job as Scott Lang's friend and keeping it lighthearted. It's not as over-the-top funny as like Guardians of the Galaxy, but it's a right mix of comedy and action.
So right along the lines of, say, the Avengers?
Yeah. But, it doesn't get into, like, Captain America tends to get a bit grim sometimes. And this doesn't. I mean, it's hard to get grim in a movie where you've got two guys in shrinking costumes fighting it out on a Thomas the Tank Engine train set. Literally on the train set.
It had a feeling of what do you call it? It felt like a Disney movie. It felt like a Disney does Marvel Universe type movie. So it was much more lighthearted.
But not badly.
No, not badly. I mean, but it felt like it was holding. It was pulling its punches. It was holding back a little bit. There were some shocking scenes. For example, turning a human being into a little gelatinous blob is kind of a horrific murder. It kind of made those scenes like that kind of stand out more. But
at the same time, it never took itself overly seriously. Which is good because you're making a movie about a guy that can shrink down to the size of an ant. I mean,
they did wipe up the blob with a piece of tissue paper. So
this was done by the villain, who is pretty much in total villainhood mode.
Yeah.
He has a few. He has a couple of kick the puppy moments.
Yeah, it's kind of the same. What do you call it? Premise with the first Iron Man movie. It's essentially the hero is fighting an evil version of himself, a weaponized version of his powers. So, as you can see in the trailer, obviously the yellow jacket suit.
Which, by the way, is done entirely in CGI. I saw a picture of the guy wearing, the motion capture rig for it, which was colored like the yellow jacket suit. But they still completely redid the suit in CGI. It actually, for those of you that played City of Heroes, it actually looks a bit like one of the old Arachnos soldier outfits. Only with
the old
long coloration.
Yeah. All right.
Crab spiders. That's what it looked like. Crab spiders.
Yeah.
I've definitely got to say, I'm glad to hear all the positive press, both from you and from the internet in general, about this. Considering all of the terrible news we'd heard about in pre-production, all the directors leaving and all that, which had a lot of people convinced that it would be absolutely dreadful. Seems to have managed to turn itself around.
Yeah, I didn't hear about that. I mean, it definitely felt a little choppy. Some of the CGI wasn't as smooth as it should have been. There's one scene in particular where he's being lifted up by fire ants, and I'm pretty sure some of the fire ants are clipping through each other, or there's some herky-jerky motion going on. on the lower portion of the pile that is pushing him up. So I don't know. It didn't look natural. It didn't look like how the rest of the ants were moving. It looked like a computer glitch or something like that. So, and there is some kind of editing, and it doesn't feel as smooth or polished as the other Marvel movies. But again, the humor and the fact that it's kind of light and still action oriented to kind of help lift it up. And it could be worse, Randy. It could be Pixels. Have you seen the Rotten Tomatoes scores for Pixels yet, hon?
No, because last I looked, I didn't have any.
Oh,
it's sitting at 10.
That's the one with Adam Sandler, right?
Yes.
Yep, it's sitting at 10%.
I was interested in that trailer, and then Adam Sandler showed up, and I was like, never mind.
Yep.
Yeah, but at the same time, it had Peter Dinklage, so...
Let me see what it's at now.
Because I was looking at that last night, and I didn't see anything on that.
Oh, no, I wouldn't waste my time.
Pixels is at 12%.
Yeah. Yeah, that's probably going to be bad, and I was of a mixed thought of it.
As soon as Adam Sandler shows up on anything that's not completely animated, no.
It's 94% want to see by the audience.
You know, the thing is, Matt, I said the same thing about Will Ferrell, and then I saw the Lego movie.
I mean, if you still want to go see it, we'll go see it in the $5.
Well, I'm going to wait to see what the premiere weekend says about that. There's enough stuff on our docket that we can catch something to see next week.
Well, to be fair, Randy, Will Ferrell's only in it for like the last 10-15 minutes as a non-animated character.
No, he's in it in various scenes as a non-animated character.
Mm-hmm.
His biggest scenes are in the last 15 minutes, but there's a couple of times where he shows up and interrupts things and...
No, not as a human. As a
human.
Does.
No, as a human, because... Yeah, because there's a couple of times where, he comes in and the kid's at the Lego stuff and he's like, why are you touching my stuff?
That's the last 10 to 15 minutes, hon.
Yeah.
I thought he did it before, too.
No.
Nope.
No. You need to go watch the movie. I know better than I have.
In the first place. Anyway, aren't we here to talk about Doctor Who?
We are, but I'm
Doctor
still
Who's
trying
a
to
Lego
kill
now.
time because our news got over ridiculously early.
Well, Doctor Who's a Lego now, so we're technically on subject.
But anyway, yes, if you haven't seen Ant-Man and you're a fan of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, go see Ant-Man. You will not be disappointed. It is definitely worth the price of admission. Aaron and I did not see it in 3D. I'm not sure if the 3D vision is any better or worth it. We don't have the budget to go see it in IMAX 3D, which would be kind of cool. But
most of the time, 3D is just a gimmick anyway.
Most of the time, but not always. A good chunk of this film is CGI, and there's a good chunk of ants moving around, of which if they 3D'd those would actually be pretty cool. But I don't think it needs the 3D. It is definitely good enough to see as a movie in its own right.
Does any movie need 3D?
No, really they don't.
There are a few, but it is really a rare few that
I kind
actually...
of wish I could see Friday the 13th Part 3 in 3D. Although Freddy's Dead is not worth watching in 3D.
I would argue that the James Cameron Avatar was about 5 times better in 3D than it was in 2D. But that would have to argue the fact that Avatar itself is... well, the visual effects in Avatar are pretty awesome. The storyline, meh.
It's the Smurfs.
But no, Ant-Man is one to definitely put on your summer viewing docket if you haven't already.
Okay, see, I kind of figured that it probably wouldn't be that good and that it wouldn't really be worth it. Hearing that, I might change my mind and I might go and watch it.
Oh yeah, it's a wonderfully written movie, and it's according to many people, it's going to very much tie in to what Phase 3 of the MCU is going to be.
Mm-hmm. This
There
is the same.
are
Go ahead.
there is a semi cameo by the new Avenger Falcon, who shows up a couple of times in the movie, and is you get to learn a little more about him, not a lot.
Okay.
Yeah, essentially, from what I understand, this is the first Iron Man for the original run-up to the first Avengers movie. So this is essentially the runner-up to start up the third run for the third Avengers movie.
Yep, this is where you're going to start being introduced to, I guess, what you can call the new Avengers. I'll take a moment to discuss this, and this is also unverified information, so it's not really spoilers. Is the fact that the fallout from what's going to be the next Captain America movie, which is of course Civil War, is going to leave a lot of the Avengers unable to work as Avengers. Because many of them will have been labeled renegades. If it goes like the comic books, Tony Stark will kind of be very discredited and not wanting to do anything. It's quite possible that if it goes like the comics, Captain America will be considered dead.
Which I know there was the idea of that partially so that if Chris Evans opted not to return, they could follow the same storyline. Of course, if Evans chooses to return, then they probably won't kill him.
Yeah,
Or they'll
that,
have him seen dead and come back like the actual comics.
So that there's going to be a whole bunch of new Avengers, which we started seeing with Avengers Age of Ultron and Captain America 2, Falcon being one of them. Ant-Man's going to be another one, and as we get these new characters coming in, they're all going to be rolled into the new Avengers, which is actually not going to be, I think, until 2019.
I know it's split
So
into two parts that are 12 months apart. I'm not sure which is. I thought they were 18 and 19, but I might be wrong.
Either way, it's going to be a while before we see the next Avengers movie. And in that time, we're going to develop all these new characters that are going to be part of it. Doctor Strange, Spider-Man, Black Panther, Captain Marvel.
It's actually been kind of interesting, Captain Marvel, lately.
Well,
Who
this
is
is
Captain Marvel?
It's technically the old Miss Marvel.
Yeah.
Who is now Captain Marvel. It's
Carol Danvers?
Carol Danvers.
Yes.
Although knowing how the MCU is going, I'm sure that Marvel will either have a cameo or appear in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. or both.
Or will be in a flashback.
Yeah.
Also, I'm expecting after this movie that there's probably going to be an Ant-Man 2.
Mm-hmm.
Probably.
According to the director, he wants to make an Ant-Man 2. And there needs to be an Ant-Man 2. I will say that right now, because Michael Douglas is very good Hank Pym, and I would love to see some of the open wounds that they have during the course of this movie addressed in another Ant-Man movie.
Possibly the search for Janet Dyne.
Yes, Janet Van. The search for Janet Van Dyne would be great. So as long as they keep introducing new characters like this and making them lovable, the MCU, in my opinion, could go on forever.
It's got quite a bit of longevity right now. Yes.
Yeah. Infinity War 1 is coming out in 2018, and Infinity War 2, 2019.
Ooh, they're gonna be trying to bash that one in hard, aren't they?
Yeah.
Well, they're going to film it back to back, probably.
Yeah, I'm just hoping
Also,
that.
yeah.
I'm just hoping that I can maintain interest and that the I'm sure they'll have greatly reduced roles. But I hope that the original Avengers, if they show up in these movies, can muster some enthusiasm
Yeah.
that far down the line.
Yeah, you can already tell that Robert Downey Jr. is kind of getting tired of playing Tony Stark.
Yeah.
Although originally he wasn't going to show up in any more movies, and then he started. Then he signed on for Civil War and other stuff. So apparently he's changed his mind at least enough to show up more.
Yeah, well, that's what happens when they drop a dump truck full of money on your front yard.
I keep hearing about this dump truck full of money. Now, do they use a different dump truck for each time it happens, or is it the same dump truck?
No, they probably have a specialized dump truck, or maybe 2 or 3, that their entire purpose from the studios is to haul money. They keep it separate from the trash dump trucks. And it's like, nah, he's holding out.
They're probably gilded.
What's that?
They're probably gilded dump trucks.
Probably gilded, yes.
And it's just like somebody's holding out. Let's dump a truck full of money on them and see if they'll crack.
Well, there's that. There's also hopefully closing out Tony Stark a bit.
There's a different. The ones for dumping money on the person, that's a form of assassination. The ones for dumping it on their yard is a form of encouragement. So there's 2 different groups there. Can't mix them up.
But, between this and what's going on with the MCU television, Daredevil, Jessica Jones, Luke Cage, Iron Fist, The Defenders, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., etc., the MCU can pretty much go on in perpetuity now. Even when these actors get too old and have to step down, they can focus on another people and eventually bring back the character with a new actor in 10, 20 years and keep this thing going on for as long as the comic books.
Oh, there's also the fact that there's so much weird stuff that happens in the universe too, like the fact that young Tony Stark was brought into the future to kill himself, then took over as Iron Man.
Anyway, I think we've now discussed Ant-Man enough. Go see it.
Yeah.
Alrighty.
So, we will move on to our 5-minute challenge. And as usual, our 5-minute challenge is brought to you from Omega. Omega, manufacturer of analog and digital timepieces for the 21st century. Remember, no one knows time better than Omega. So, who wants to do Jubilee in 5 minutes or less?
Not it.
I believe I did it last week.
I think it's Tim's turn.
Tim, you have been volunteered for the 5-minute challenge.
I have a broken tooth. I can't do it.
Okay. I'm gonna. All right.
Do you accept this challenge?
Do you accept it? You don't have to accept it if you don't
Just
feel
read
up
it
to
off the Wikipedia, Tim. Read it off the Wikipedia. It's like
quiet, Aaron. Quiet.
Wikipedia.
We do not want to get sued.
Can you get sued for reading off the Wikipedia? Isn't that
open source?
Open source.
Technically speaking, it's the intellectual property of somebody.
All right.
But whoever it is, it's not us. So it's better if you look at that stuff and try to phrase it into your own words.
Just trying to trick you, Tim.
All right. Well, anyway, okay, I accept this challenge.
Okay, so Matt, get the stopwatch up and going.
It is ready.
All right, give him a countdown, and from there he can go.
So you ready, Tim?
Yes.
Okay, start in 3, 2, 1, go.
The Doctor and Evelyn Smythe arrive in the Tower of London, but then they find out that they're not really in the Tower of London, that they know that it's a
Altered?
It's a parallel universe where in 1903 the Daleks invaded the Earth, but they were defeated by the Doctor, and now England is the English Empire, and it's this fascist state, and there's a stained glass window, with a picture of the TARDIS on it, and the Doctor says, "Oh, that's nice," but then the TARDIS disappears, and they don't know where the TARDIS is, and they're keeping a Dalek prisoner in the statue, and there's gonna be a big celebration where they kill the last Dalek, and everyone's excited, and I'm failing miserably, aren't I? To
Keep it going. You still got a couple minutes.
But it turns out that the president of the English Empire's wife is secretly plotting to overthrow the president of the English Empire and take power for herself, and she's going to end up. She wants to marry the Dalek. I don't know how that's going to work out, but
Yeah, plunger.
Very awkwardly.
But it turns out that in addition to the Dalek, they've actually captured the Doctor. So now there are 2 Doctors in this time period, just like in Back to the Future Part 2 when there were 2 Martys and 2 Docs. But one of the Doctors has had his legs chopped off, and also the Prime Minister of the United States of America makes long-winded speeches of praise to the president of the English Empire.
Because he's sucking up.
Because he's sucking up. And it's illegal to contract your sentences or to use contractions in your words. So you have to talk like Storm from the X-Men. And the Doctor and the English Prime Minister or President also likes to force midgets and dwarves and little people, I should say, being PC, and to dress up as Daleks and sing and dance as the Daleks. And then some real Daleks come along and they say, "Fuck that," and they blow up the dwarfs, which was very, very sad. And it turns out that in the end, the Daleks are defeated by the Doctor because they realize that to become the masters of the universe, that they have to not become the masters of the universe. In order to survive, they have to die. They have to die to live, to die to live, to die. An endless loop. And eventually history is set right. The timeline is fixed with some minor traces, and it turns out that perhaps humans aren't that different from Daleks after all, except we had a choice. And the Jubilee is rather disturbing when you think about it.
Are you good?
I'm good.
Okay. That was rather scattershot.
Not really that good at thinking on your feet there, are you?
No.
Told you to read the Wikipedia.
Hey, I might not be
illegal.
good at thinking on my feet, but I'm not a cheater.
Well, Tim.
I think it was more linear than I tend to do
Wow.
when I don't plan ahead.
Well, it's even worse because a good chunk of the plot of this is about a temporal paradox, which in itself tends to delineate things.
Do we want time?
Yes.
We managed to get Tim, despite his scatter shot, to get it done in 0:4:32.
I'm starting to think we're going to need to tighten up
Hooray.
that to the 2-minute challenge now.
Because even with Tim rambling, he managed to at least get all the major plot points in about 4.5 minutes.
Yay! Yay me!
And we are still technically ahead of schedule, but only by a few minutes. So I'm going to go ahead and start our normal what you liked, what you didn't like. And of course, as usual,
As usual.
my first victim of the evening is Matt.
Am I a victim or a willing participant? You make the call. Something general overall I liked about this story. Lots of general
Aaron
things.
changed her Skype picture.
No, guys, I reinstalled. I had to update the Skype app on my new laptop, and instead of updating the app, it just downloaded Skype for Windows. So now I have the app and I have the program on here.
Wow.
Yeah.
I think definitely one of the notable things was the really good background sound effects and stuff. Like when they were in the Tower of London the first time, they were in a more or less abandoned area. You can actually hear echoes. When something happened off in the distance and they could barely hear, you could also barely hear it too. Like when the Dalek screams and everyone in just one gathering of scenes can hear it, and you hear it for different levels of closeness and sound blockage. Just a lot of really good little things with the background noises, and also I like the fact that they also brought back the old blasters again for sure this time too. I noticed that they brought back the old laser sounds from at least the Ninth Doctor. No, not the Ninth Doctor. The Seventh Doctor.
Well, you know that this is actually the first appearance of the Daleks in a Big Finish audio.
Yeah.
It's the first appearance of them without it being labeled as part of the Dalek Empire arc, although I do believe some in the main range had that title as well. But this is the first to be separate from that storyline.
Okay.
Dalek Empire.
So, Tim, what did you like overall?
Overall, I really liked how heavy the story was. This was probably the most heavy Doctor Who story I have ever experienced. But it seemed like it was heavy without being Anvasilius. like ham-handed.
Mm-hmm.
It was heavy without being blunt.
Yeah.
You could feel the weight of everything. Yeah.
Yeah, you know, and like the oppressive atmosphere, fear of just what the world has become in 100 years of like living under the like not the control of the Daleks, but just the influence of Daleks. And what that was, and that it was almost unrelenting in a bit.
Mm-hmm.
I think I should be ready to listen to this story again in about a year. Because I definitely want to listen to it again. But one hearing will go a long way for me.
All right. Bill?
I'm going to say the free will versus orders versus the decisions theme that it has going on. It's not specifically making a certain point, but it's basically looking at that type of idea of making your own decisions, taking orders, acting of your own free will from various different angles, and that is running throughout the story in different ways. And I like the way they work that together.
By the way, Tim, I'm afraid you're
Yeah.
not going to get the luxury of that because you are basically about to get the fillet of this story next week when we review Dalek. Because Dalek is heavily based on Jubilee.
Oh,
In fact,
I've seen Dalek before, and I know that.
It is, but it takes off a lot of what makes Jubilee Jubilee.
Yeah.
In that way, like the main thing in this story, the whole paradox and such, is completely absent from Dalek.
yes, it is.
Mhm.
But just as you went on and was talking about the good thing about the whole will versus orders, even that's touched on in Dalek a bit.
Only just a little though.
Yeah, but we'll
I
deal with that
demand
next week.
orders. Obey. Obey. That's
Yeah,
that's
the irony of a Dalek ordering for orders.
Mhm.
Okay, so Aaron, what did you like overall about this?
I like the atmosphere of neuroses. Everything is amped up to 11. Like, everyone is insane, pretty much. Except for the
I know that
doctor and Evelyn.
the doctor seems.
And
Think
Lamb.
about it. Think about what you just said. Everyone is insane except the Sixth Doctor.
Well,
And-
actually, the Sixth Doctor is insane. The version of him that they have locked
He's,
away.
yes, he is relatively sane here, which is really scary when you come to think
yeah.
about it.
Yeah, and poor Lamb, who just wants to get the hell out of Dodge before everything goes nuclear. Yeah, just like everything where, like, I just remember the one part because it sounds so stereotypical of course, some of the stuff that I would hear growing up, is, was it Rochester's wife? I can't remember her name. Yeah, she sits. I think she's like sitting down Evelyn and talking about getting all dressed up for the party or for the Jubilee. You have to put on their bright colors and everything.
Yeah.
And their makeup.
Her name is Miriam.
And all that. Miriam. Yeah. And it's just like how he needs this striker, but she really wants someone who can break the skin, and it's just like, oh my god, everybody here is crazy. And then of course, it is Rochester, right? That's his name.
Yes, Rochester is.
Yeah, I actually did not take notes on this. I was on Paragon chat as I was listening to this one.
Bad Aaron.
No cookie.
I don't have to actually watch it. I'm gonna be playing video games.
I know. I'm just
That's why I like
chastising
the
you
radio
for
dramas.
chatting instead of taking notes. No biscuit.
I was running around Eden. I was barely even chatting. Anyway, but yeah, Rochester, who just wants to be a good man and is, obviously insane by the fact that he keeps dwarves and Daleks rolling around singing. Looks like we're on, boys. So
really, in a way, the air here, even though this takes place in 1903, which is technically the Edwardian era,
But takes place
really
in
it's
2003.
But
Yeah,
yes, but I mean, when the Dalek invasion happens, it was the early Edwardian era, and pretty much what they state in the course of the thing is that social development and everything stopped afterwards. Really,
went like
the fact that the Edwardian era began in 1901, you really don't have a proper Edwardian era here. You really have a post-Victorian era.
Yeah.
And this is the Lewis Carroll era. So you have the everybody's mad here kind of thing.
Although it's not quite steampunk because the technology.
No, I'm not talking about the steampunkiness
No, that's
of it.
I'm just saying in terms of like Victorian sci-fi. It's generally in some ways it has similar things to what people would look for in that era, which is generally steampunk, but the technology is completely different. I'm kind of curious though how if they had actually fully either acted out or animated, if they'd be still dressed in Victorian clothing, or if they'd have decided to move that a different way.
Oh yeah, that is a good.
It would not surprise me if they were still in Victorian outfits to how they
No,
were
yeah, it
talking.
wouldn't surprise me either. Yeah.
Because like when I imagine them as like maybe 19. I guess maybe 1930s. I imagine the guy in like a black, a black coat, maybe not coattails and tie and stuff like that. Rochester. So, that is a good
But
point.
no,
Like,
I was talking from the social thing. Everything that Lewis Carroll was making fun of about British society in Alice in Wonderland is kind of mirrored here. Except, of course, there's no royalty. There's the president, which is basically dealt with like they're the freaking king because
Except
it's
he's a
passed on.
monarchic president. They mentioned that it's
Yeah,
been his
I
family for
was.
the past 100 years.
Yep, that's what I was about to say. Is that it's been passed on from father to son. So he's a king in everything but name. And it's kind of dealt with in that same kind of way, how casually the king sends people to die off with his head, to how easily they're embracing the most horrific concepts is basically the essence of that. So this is really England. It is through the looking glass in a way.
hmm
So what I really liked about this would be actually Colin Baker's acting along with Maggie Stables as Evelyn Smythe. Colin Baker, who you expect to be, slightly off kilter, plays this straight except for the aged insane version of himself, which I think he managed to actually do kind of in the if you wanted me mad, I'll show you mad.
Yeah.
Because he was completely off his rocker, and that
They
was
really
actually
focused really hard. It could be bigger on the inside.
yeah. I mean, he started out sounding rational, and then you start listening to what he's saying, and it's just almost horrific.
hmm
Because this is the doctor, this is the protagonist, this is the hero, and he's completely and totally cracked and broken. And the fact that Colin Baker's able to bounce between the two and make sure that there's enough of a stark difference between them was really awesome acting on Colin's part, I thought, showing the man actually has quite a bit of talent.
Mm-hmm.
And Maggie Stables, the late Maggie Stables, who played Evelyn Smythe, is her stark contrary, and her bit of her snarkiness is on what's going on. I thought was actually very very useful. All right, so what didn't you like, Matt?
I wish there would have been a little bit more development on what actually went down in 1903. We don't get a lot of specifics on that. We get little tidbits of like, say, the Doctor dodging fire from Daleks and seeing hordes and hordes of Daleks racing at him, but that's all we really ever get. We don't know how he survived, we don't know how he lasted this long, we don't know how he managed to stop them supposedly in the first place.
All right.
There's just major loopholes in that logic.
All right. Yeah, I have to agree, but I'm going to keep most of my comments for what I don't like because I've got a big one.
Okie doke. So next.
So,
Ditto.
all right.
Tim, I think.
Yes, Tim. Sorry, I was adjusting my status in Skype.
Which I don't think you didn't care for.
This is weird because what I didn't like is also pretty much the same thing that I did like. Again, the heaviness, but this time, if I look at it a different way, it's like this episode was, for my taste, a bit too oppressive. It's like, oh, I like how this is making me think. but I don't like how this is making me think of all these depressing things. You know, like it wasn't blunt, but it was still a bit suffocating, I think,
At times, yes.
at times.
So it's something you'd maybe want to listen to an episode at a time, spread out over a week.
Maybe.
Yeah.
All right. Bill?
I'm going to have to say the temporal mechanics of this episode.
Damn it, Bill!
You knew I would. I'm sure you did. But,
Yes, I
yeah,
know, but that was kind of what I was hinting when I said I was saving it for mine with Matt.
The fact that they prevented the 1903 from happening by it happening in 2003, and the Doctor bringing two timelines together as if that made sense without needing an explanation, and a whole lot of things like that just took me out of the episode. I mean, or I'm sitting there trying to enjoy it, and I'm sitting here like, what the fuck? And that was a bit too much for me.
All right. Aaron?
I guess I'm going to kind of piggyback off of that, only I'm going to say that it was kind of, I didn't like the idea of an alternate version of the Doctor there. I mean, I understand it would be kind of cool and everything. I thought it would maybe be better if Evelyn was the one that they had kept away, and somehow the Doctor had died and she was the only, thing that they had.
They'd kept her alive for 100 extra years.
Yeah, somehow. And then, they had found her and everything. Of course, Evelyn wouldn't be the one to find her. It would be the Doctor, and she'd be rambling on about the Doctor, how the Doctor had abandoned her, or something like that. But it just seemed kind of weird, because I always feel that the Doctor is kind of impervious for being a time clone. Do we see many time clones of the Doctor ever? I mean, we've seen his other regenerations being pulled out of, time to help him out.
Officially.
Yeah. Like the Valyard, I guess, is kind of one.
The Valyard is technically one official. There is a fan rumor about Inferno.
Right.
That the alternate England, that's a fascist dictatorship. That their glorious leader that they talk about in there is actually the third Doctor as a fascist dictator.
Well, wait, when you say time clone, are you specifically referring to the type of paradox happening here, or just there being two versions of the Doctor around at the same time?
I'm talking about, what's going on here, where it's the same Doctor. It's the sixth Doctor showing up.
Oh, just the same Doctor being around and...
Yeah, because like I said, we've seen the Time Lords pull the Doctor's other regenerations
right
to help
him. You're just generally saying breaking the first law in that way.
Yeah, it was just kind of weird, and it was just it always feels like, I mean, it's off-putting to the fact that how it was done to him and everything, kind of, the poor sixth Doctor keeps getting beaten up on. Colin Baker gets his revenge, though.
I mean, there's Day of the Daleks, but that's only very brief. There's the Big Bang, that's also kind of brief, and he died. Well, the universe ends.
Yeah. Wait, Day of the Daleks?
Yes.
Is that
Day of the Daleks? The third Doctor does meet himself.
Huh.
Through while he's experimenting with the TARDIS.
Yeah.
Briefly.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
But it's very brief.
Because they open up the door and they're like, oh my gosh, and Joe's like, should we be worried about that? And the Doctor's like,
There's Father's Day, and we all know what happened there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It feels like it should be more... if it's going to happen, it should be more destructive than what happened.
More destructive, or played for humor, rather than played seriously. Because the Doctor can break that first law in the case of cheap tricks.
Yeah. like I said, I can see it more being, if they were going to play it serious like that, instead of having the Doctor be imprisoned, I can see it as somehow the Doctor disappears or he's killed or something like that, and all they have left is Evelyn, and yeah, so. And then it would be even more shocking for the Sixth Doctor to find her. It would see her. He would probably wind up seeing her in an entire new light for the rest of the adventures too. So it would build on that relationship. I don't know. It was interesting, but didn't quite hold water for me.
Yeah, this is not the best Big Finish representative of a time paradox. If you want something like that, I would refer you to the Big Finish audio Colditz, which is a Seventh Doctor audio. It's 4 episodes, but they're both two-parters, each feeding off the other, causing the paradox, which centers around the fact that in one timeline, Ace leaves her CD Walkman there in 1940s, which causes the Nazis to learn laser technology, which in
So
turn causes them to win the war,
the
which in
very
turn
same plot
causes...
lines that the Daleks accidentally averted in Remembrance of the Daleks, except
Yes.
that was the 60s.
And instead of the instead it's the Nazis. And so the other half of that is the alternate timeline, where they go to like 1953 Nazi Europe in the same time. It's
Back to the Future.
It's a very interesting episode. I have to listen to it again sometime. It's been a while.
Sounds a lot like
Anyway,
Back to the Future 2. Anyway.
Yes, the thing I don't like about this is the time paradox because, well, you've heard me all bitch about paradoxes before.
Mm-hmm.
It is one of my red button pushes in this, and here it is handled very, very badly. Because in one timeline he defeats the Daleks, and in another timeline the Daleks blow themselves up, which means the Daleks never invaded at all. It's never really fully unraveled, and it bugs me that it was,
And
which is
the
probably
only
why
way it
Shearman
really affects
dropped.
him is a few phantom memories.
Yeah, and for me, that's probably why Shearman dropped that whole plotline idea when he went to write Dalek, because he realized he handled it badly and decided that it needed to be edited out. But in writing, the way it's handled completely just bugs me, with the Doctor apparently trying to hold it back and couldn't. Because there's potentially 3-4 timelines going on, and it would have made more sense to me if modern day society were suddenly getting attacked by fascist, dictatorship, like the two timelines tried to coexist at the same time.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
That would have made more sense to me than this. Or you had 3 timelines, because technically you should have had 3 different 2003 timelines: the normal one, the Earth Empire, and Dalek controlled. That should have been the 3 timelines that should have attacked.
In this case, it's like the invasions are like a magnet, and the Doctor's trying to stick his hand in between the magnet, and
that really doesn't work.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the key flaw of this episode, which is why 3 or 4 plus of us, that's all our key issue, because it's kind of the linchpin of the story and it falls apart.
Yeah.
This kind of falls apart and just spins there in the middle of nowhere.
Okay. So, scene that you like.
Back to picking children. I think I'll have to go with one of the obvious ones. Particular scene I liked a lot was one that was heavily borrowed for Dalek. Doctor, etc. The doctor being put into a room, in a dark room, and suddenly the little lights blink on, and you hear the voice, and instantly he knows what he's in a room with, and starts to freak out.
That's, by the way, what I would have done for a bump personally. I would have taken the video from that particular scene and spliced it over the audio from Jubilee.
I've seen, or yeah, I think one of us. Well, I forget if one of us linked or I just saw it on YouTube, but there has been a version of that scene animated on YouTube by a fan.
So, Tim, what was your favorite scene?
If I think about it, I think my favorite scene was the one where Rochester, the president, is all, oh, thank God, now we can talk because we're away from all the listening devices, and I'm not really bad. I'm just pretending to be bad because the Daleks are really in control. And I like this scene because it was like the first time that this story took a new direction that wasn't being as predictable as it had been up to this point. I think because
essentially he's saying like the main bad human isn't your typical bad human. He's more or less acting
completely just off his rocker.
And it turns out he's off his rocker, yeah, but
but still, it's like, and I think it was also necessary for this character because if I had to endure just this steady stream of pure evil that this character was for the rest of the series, or without some breaks, even if it was a crazy break, I don't think I would have been able to take this episode.
Fair enough.
He was a little too ham-fisted, otherwise.
All right, Bill?
Thankfully, no one took this one, but I have a feeling somebody after me is going to. But the scene where, up until this point, they've been hinting, he in the dark in his wheelchair, you're thinking it's Davros, you're sure, they've got Davros in the tower, and it's the Doctor.
Yep.
Yeah,
And
they
I
were
just
pretty.
love the way they pulled that off.
They were pretty heavily hinting that was Davros.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, you might say he created the Daleks.
Yeah.
And I'm like, really?
Yep.
I knew who it was this listening, but when I first listened to this audio, back when I listened to the entire first 100 Big Finish audios back in the day, I was like, oh my God, they've got Davros. Evelyn? Oh, holy hell.
Right.
It is literally an oh my fucking God moment. Aaron, your favorite scene.
It's the one where the Doctor explains to Evelyn how they have created a society of hate, a culture of hate through the marketing of the Daleks. Essentially, there's Dalek drinks. There's Daleks are in movies everywhere, and they're usually portrayed as buffoonish villains, just like how the Nazis were. So, to me, it was kind of the Doctor explaining the Godwin rule of the internet. So it was kind of, and especially considering I believe Colin Baker is fairly active on the internet, isn't he?
Somewhat, but I'm not sure if he was when they made this.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of a slap in the face moment because when I was growing up, I don't know about you guys, but there was all kinds of World War II documentaries. There's all kinds of both old and also newer World War II films, or films that are based in World War II.
I think in this case they're talking more of the Nazi exploitation genre than actual historical World War II. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because documentaries are one thing. You can't
Well,
talk. If you
can
can't
have
talk about the
Nazis.
Nazis, then you can't talk about the Romans.
Well,
Right.
no, I'm talking about like Nazi exploitation documentaries. Have you ever seen those? The box sets that they sell about that focus on pretty
All the
much
bad,
the
evil,
entire
nasty
Nazi
things
culture
these
and
people
stuff.
have done.
Got you.
It's more about glorification
Propaganda.
of Nazi, propaganda. They'll sell the box sets with propaganda films, and relive the century of hatred, and you know those types of box sets that I was seeing them advertised on TV quite often about
I
5 or 6
kind of
years
remember
ago.
some of those, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I
Yeah.
Jubilee,
also
by the
remember they
way,
didn't
was
last long.
released in January of 2003.
Okay.
Yeah.
Which means it was recorded in 2002, which is the very early before everybody got on board days of social media.
Yeah.
Oh,
But still,
speaking
it's kind of, yeah. I found it very insightful.
speaking of which, I just remembered to bring this up. So this apparently takes place in mass majority the summer after I graduated out of high school.
And that has what bearing?
Just that it's a crazy little coincidence.
It also was released 2 months before the announcement of the new series of Doctor Who, which was in March of 2003.
So during that time of period where Shulka was irrelevant but not out yet.
Where Shulka was what we thought things were coming out and was being announced on the BBC's website as coming out next month. Because Shulka aired in, I think, beginning the first week of February 2003 and continued
I thought it was
throughout.
supposed to be an anniversary thing in November. Or it was
No,
just to celebrate the anniversary without actually being on it.
no, they were actually planning on starting. The Scream of the Shulka was supposed to be the first of the new BBC audio visual adventures that was going to be the BBC adventures,
Yeah.
which was going to be the continuation of Doctor Who. It was produced to coincide with the 40th anniversary. Okay, it was actually posted. My apologies. That was actually posted in the 13th to 18th November 2003.
Okay.
So this is a while before Shulka. And it must have been December 2003 where we heard of new Doctor Who, because I remember Shulka had been out for a month.
Ah.
I was going to say, I don't think it didn't start till 04.
No, new Doctor Who didn't start until 05. But we heard about it in 2003. But I thought we'd heard about it a lot earlier in 2003 than that.
No. They wouldn't have pulled out on that for that long.
Okay. There's a bit of a mix-up in this, because according to Doctor Who Series 1 on Wikipedia, the official announcement for the return of Doctor Who was 26 September, following the release of Scream of the Shulka.
Oh.
Yet, according to the Scream of the Shulka Wikipedia, it was originally broadcast 13 November to 18 December. So somebody's right and somebody's not.
Right.
Wikipedia.
Well, somebody watched Scream of the Shulka, hopped in the TARDIS, went back in time.
I do agree.
Announced that they had finished seeing Scream of the Shulka, and then announced New Who.
I do agree with the 26th September, because that seems to me because they're actually saying that the announcement was following Scream of the Shulka, and they have a actual cited Doctor Who returns to BBC One news article that's in the Internet Wayback Machine. And the Scream of the Schalke website just has that information with no, particular note. So I
Anywho.
think that it came out in August, and then in August or the beginning of September, and then they made the announcement, which made Schalke pointless. Anyway, the point is that this was just before Doctor Who production started on a new series. So this is really one of the last Big Finish audios where they didn't know there was more coming. I mean, there's a few more coming up the pipe in the low 30s, but not many.
Anywho.
Anyway, where were we at? Favorite scenes. I think we were at me. Or did you have
Yep.
more to say about? And I'm going to take a lot of flack for this. Because this scene is completely reviled by most of the internet. But it makes me smirk, and it makes me smirk in a bit of a cruel, sadistic way, too. But my favorite scene is the singing Daleks and their ultimate demise.
Daleks do not dance.
Do not
Daleks
sing.
do not sing. And that's pretty much why that whole Daleks do not sing. And just the sheer amount of disdain and disgust Nick Briggs can pour into a Dalek voice while still making it sound like a Dalek voice.
Speaking of which, I want to give this credit over New Who, and it's something Big Finish has probably done this otherwise, but I hadn't really thought about it. Nick Briggs, yet there's about 4 different Dalek voices, I think.
Yes.
Whereas New Who manages at most 2 or 3 per episode, and that's including Supremes.
Yeah, actually, Nick Briggs has 3 regular Dalek voices and the Dalek Emperor voice. I've actually seen that in the Doctor Who Confidentials.
And also Supreme voice, which is just a really deep Dalek voice.
The Supreme voice is basically a slightly remodulated. It's an Emperor voice without the reverb. The difference is, and I've learned this by doing modulation. Dalek voice is done at a 30 hertz. Emperor voice is done, I think, at about 20. And has an extra reverb on it, so you get this. Supreme voice is pretty much the same as the Emperor voice, only it's done at the normal 30 hertz modulation.
Yeah.
And without the Emperor reverb. But before they'd even come up with the Supreme, Nick Briggs was talking about, yes, I do 3 Dalek voices. I've got this, I've got this, I've got this, and I could do this, That was pretty much, him, and I think that was either the Confidential for Dalek or for probably Parting of the Ways.
Oh, actually, I take that back. The one time they have Nick Briggs do multiple Dalek voices in one episode is when the Cult of Scarro's around, because they do have different voices.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. Why does most of his common Daleks do sound very samey, usually, at least in New Who.
So I'm going to take that to be the direction, considering how different it is here.
Yeah.
The difference, though, with the singing Daleks is that you can tell they're actually just dwarves and nothing, which is, by the way, horrific, since he basically seals them in the Dalek thing.
And
yeah,
cuts
I
off their...
thought that was pretty nasty, how he had to cut the dwarf's hand off in order to fit inside. Just yeah, that's kind of gross. You just cut off a person's hand.
The doctor's just like, he's going to bleed to death in there. It's like, oh, yeah. Don't worry, I'm just pretending to be evil. That's not the point. Not the point at all.
We're all mad here. Okay, so what
Dalek
didn't
is
you
gonna
like?
slump over in the corner.
Matt.
Didn't like. I guess the one that kind of grew annoying was the whole. He had this big epic end speech, and all of a sudden, I can't hold it anymore. I can't hold it anymore, and then bullshit happens, and there's Daleks everywhere. I think that's the one that made me go, oh, come on. I understand you're trying to get to your end climax, but at least explain it.
Tim?
I don't like at the very end when they're at the real Tower of London and the guy's trying to sell Evelyn the T-shirt with Anne Boleyn on it. Because at this point it's like, yes, I get it. You know, it's that was taking the message a bit one step too far.
I didn't think it did. I think it made a nice counterpoint that even though it's not there, you still have this horrific mentality in today's world. I thought it made sense, but I'll defer to you on that one because it's your choice. Bill.
I think this is the scene Matt was saying, but I'm going to stick with it anyway. The scene where the two timelines come together like a magnet at the end, and the Daleks are all of a sudden invading because the Doctor's there, and the Daleks don't even understand why. And
yeah, that's just a hodgepodge mess. It's such a hot mess of a way to do things that it's worth mentioning twice.
All right. Aaron?
I didn't like the one with the scene with the dwarf getting his hand cut off, the little person getting his hand cut off. I thought that was a bit too nasty.
They definitely could not have done it, at least with you looking at it on.
Yeah. They couldn't do that on screen.
It also feels strange that the Doctor should have moved to kind of stop it from happening.
I think the Doctor's in shock.
I think so.
I got, like, just listening to him, I think the Doctor was in shock. Like, he thought that he believed the guy, that he wanted to be good. And then as he's sitting there, he's like, what the fuck?
Yeah. I mean, I can understand why it would be kind of funny in a very black, dark humor type of way. But at the same time, it's also kind of just disturbing. It feels like it's more something that you'd see in a Torchwood episode and not a Doctor Who episode.
Not to mention, wouldn't that Dalek be in a corner bleeding out somewhere?
Yeah, exactly. I wouldn't have minded so much if it were in a Torchwood episode, but being in a Doctor Who episode, it's kind of a bit off, a little bit too
I
dark.
think Big Finish does a few things that are a little more Torchwood than Doctor Who, just because they have a little bit more freedom.
Leniency.
Mm-hmm.
There's no watershed for audio dramas.
For one, they don't really have a Bureau of Standards and Practices
yeah.
to tell them no. For two, it's not a visual medium.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they're only talking about it, they're not showing it.
Yeah.
All right, so I've got two. Scenes I like the least. One of which is Dalek juice.
Oh yeah, that I almost forgot about that.
Ugh.
That was kind of a spew moment to me. You boil a Dalek until the juice comes down, and then you collect it and drink it.
Does it kill the Dalek though?
No, because apparently he regenerates back.
For 100 years, yeah. It's just like giving someone second-degree burns and collecting the pus and.
Yes.
Gross.
Yeah, now you get why I'm sitting here listening to this going, spew! The second one was the Dalek talking to the Dalek Supreme and then exterminating him. Because generally when you've got the Dalek Supreme, he's flanked by two other Daleks. So it would have been exterminate, blam, counter-exterminate.
Mm-hmm.
And your fleet moves on. So,
like even earlier on, he's like, I forget what he was like. You must do something. You must do something, or I will exterminate you. And the Dalek he's talking to is just like, you do not have that capability.
Mm-hmm. It was just like I thought that scene was not played overly well. I mean, not by Nicholas Briggs. It wasn't written well, I should say. So that's my thought on it. So we're going to move on to final thoughts since we are of that time. Matt.
Some of the center bit, in particular, two things going on at the same time bit, is the biggest leap of logic that they don't explain well enough, don't cover well enough, and just kind of sits there staring you in the face going, "Hi, I'm a plot hole. Drive a truck through me."
Mm-hmm.
However, the rest of it I think does fare pretty well for the most part, and other than a few scenes that get a little too dark, it's an overall pretty good story and a good idea. It's just that sadly the centerpiece was left askew and not finished properly.
All right. Tim.
This was probably the most well-written, ultra-heavy story I've ever heard. That it was unrelentingly depressing at times, but still, in a way, it was beautiful. That you had to admire the craft of this thing. It, and it, in a way, it was perfect in the way that the Dalek themselves are perfect. It,
All right. Are you done?
Yeah.
All right. Bill.
This episode has an overwhelmingly positive reputation, and on one hand, I can see it in some of the very good dramatic scenes and the dark comedy of the episode. On the other hand, it is really hurt by the fact that the centerpiece and the premise is so ridiculously flawed that it really hurts the overall quality of the episode, especially since there is an alternative by the same writer available.
All right. Aaron.
Well, this episode or this serial had a much more lively. The characters were a little bit more interesting. The plot, even though the plot was pretty confusing with the whole paradox, it was still twisted enough, still familiar enough that it kept my attention. And of course, the absolute insanity of the whole situation. It definitely didn't put you to sleep, or it didn't confuse me as much as the last Big Finish one that we went through. So, yeah. That's my opinion.
All right. So this episode works great as a black satire on the bloodthirsty nature of British culture. It works great as a satire on rampant consumerism in mass media market, basically making fun of the own Dalek mania from the 1960s. It makes great social commentary, but at the same time, as an overall story, it is inherently flawed by its keystone piece of plot that just doesn't pan out. It's an obvious prototype for Dalek, and it's obvious that Shearman got his act together when actually writing for the official Doctor Who. I just wish he could have figured out that it didn't quite work when doing it in Jubilee. So now your ratings. Matt.
I kind of feel this is the same as last time. A really good story, but sadly, there's just one or two little bits that would make what would almost be a 5 go run askew and bring it down a notch. So I have to give this another 4.
All right. Tim?
I'm gonna agree and give this a 4 because I think this was a good story. It was well written. It just wasn't quite my cup of tea.
All right.
Yeah.
Bill?
Okay.
I'm probably being too harsh, but just because the failure is such an important part of the story, I have to take what I would probably give a 3 otherwise and give it a 2.5.
Ooh.
Ouch. Aaron?
I'm probably going to give this a 3.5. It was interesting, but it definitely had quite a lot of flaws. One of them was a major part of the story. So.
I am going to agree with Aaron and give it a 3.5. I find it slightly better than Terra Firma, but the huge plot hole of the temporal anomaly or the paradox just hurts this considerably because it comes up repeatedly and it just doesn't properly pay off and kind of leaves you with an empty feeling. And so overall, that will give Jubilee a rating of 3.5.
Just above average again.
By our crew. That is 3.5 with a 3375 from the core, which will put it slightly above where we were last week, which was about halfway. So, sorting my data, I will have our answer in a brief second.
Atomics to power, turbines to speed.
And this one comes in at 65 out of 117, I think? 113 episodes related, so just a little above the halfway. It also drops Terra Firma down to number 67. Jubilee is just above the 5 Doctors, which has a 3.0, 3.4 and 3.4 from the core. And Christmas Invasion, which is a solid 3.5 from both total and core. Something that it is tied with for several until we get to A Town Called Mercy. So that's the way it is.
Just above the average.
Just above average. If they had found a way to properly do the temporal paradox, this would have been much higher, in my opinion.
Yes. That would have at least boosted it.
And that's the way it is on Wednesday, July 22nd, 2015.
Hooray.
So, Bill, are you so closer?
Yep, okay. We don't have any more reviews featuring Evelyn, but if you want to listen to us talk more about Colin Baker's Sixth Doctor, we will be uploading our Season 1 review of the 2 Doctors and our Season 2 reviews of Destiny of the Doctor, Trouble in Paradise, and The Twin Dilemma onto our current YouTube channel over the next week. If you enjoy listening to us, please consider subscribing on Twitch, YouTube, and Mixcloud. And you can always follow us for updates on Facebook and Twitter. If you really like us, you can go over to patreon.com/unearthlypodcast and support us. And do not forget to tune in next week as we take a look at 2005's 9th Doctor episode, Dalek, once again by Robert Sherman.
Yes, we've finally gotten there.
We finally reached it. Some more videos. Yay, videos.
Hooray.
And with that, good night.
Good night.
Nighty-night.
Good night, everybody.